All right, all guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 brought to us by the official beer of the program, Johnny Cuba. European roots with that Caribbean soul. It's a refreshing German lager in a can. Pick up a six-pack of Johnny Cuba right now, your local Sedanos, Presidente, Winn-Dixie, Fresco y Mas. That's how we'll enjoy the Super Bowl this weekend, sitting on the couch in the ZASLOW Mansion family room, probably in my underwear, with an ice cold Johnny Cuba in my hand. Make sure you always drink responsibly. Don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. Joining us now is our pal, DA, Damon Amendolara, SiriusXM Mad Dog Radio, the DA show with Mike Babchick. You guys are off and running now. The last time I spoke with you, it was a few months ago when the show started. Are you comfortable now? Is everything going the way that you thought it would? How's it going?
Yeah, it's been going good, Zaz. I mean, Babs is a very unpredictable guy in the best way possible. In radio, you kind of want to make sure you're on your toes and you're ready for anything. And Babs has some wacky stories and bizarre run-ins and strange pasts. And so I actually like that because I never know what I'm going to get on any weekday morning. But it makes it really fun. And I feel like we built a good chemistry, the entire team. My only bummer is that the end of football season means, you end up kind of going through a bit of an exhale. Of course, basketball is here and the playoffs will be right around the corner, March Madness. But there's something about football, that kind of like wave that you get up to on a weekend and then you come off of it with your reaction. And then you go through the rest of the week and then you come up again and you're on that thing, that roller coaster all season long. And then it's over and you go, wait, what now? So that's the only thing that I'm not quite looking forward to, but it's all good.
Well, once this game happens this weekend, February is the worst sports month of the year, right? Like February and July, those 2 months are brutal, right?
Tough. Yeah.
Yeah, really bad.
Yeah.
I remember one year though, didn't you did a thing, maybe it was in a February, maybe it was over the summer, where you did a sports movie bit on your show, right? Like a running thing, right?
Yes. Yeah, that was the summer of COVID. So we had nothing going on that summer until, remember, the Stanley Cup finals or the Stanley Cup playoffs, the NBA playoffs didn't start until really the fall. So we were kind of like grasping at straws there. So we did Mothership at the Movies, where we took classic sports movies and then broke them down as though they were real sporting events. So that's much better than breaking down the movie of them. And instead, like wondering, well, how does Henry Rowan Gardner not get Rookie of the Year honors or World Series MVP or what have you if he's coming and throwing 99 miles an hour out of the stands? So things like that got us through, and maybe we'll have to get creative as well this offseason.
I swear to you, it was maybe a month ago. Rookie of the Year was on television. I hadn't seen it. Had to be 25 years. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to stop on it and I'm going to watch.
Nice.
And I'll tell you, and for guys who are our age, classic movie. And I hadn't seen it forever. I thought it held up nicely. I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's the kind of the funny thing. If you go into old, potentially bad sports movies with an open mind of like, it's just supposed to be a silly sports movie, there's a lot of them that are far more enjoyable than if you really started digging into the acting and the plot holes or whatever. And I think Rookie of the Year holds up. I also think, what was the one where the kid inherits the Minnesota Twins?
Little Big League.
Little Big League also holds up. Mighty Ducks tends to hold up. So that kind of golden era of 1990s sports films built around kids tend to actually be okay in retrospect.
All right. So as people can see, if they're watching on the YouTube channel right now, as opposed to listening on the podcast, they could see you're in studio right now. So you're going to Vegas later this week for Radio Row. Who's the best guest you've ever had doing your show on Radio Row? Who's been your favorite guest that you had? Because, folks know it's not just athletes, but sometimes depending on what city you're in, you'll get like really good celebrities that show up. And I would imagine Vegas is one of those cities where it could be the case where you get some great guest opportunities.
Yeah, totally. Well, two athletes kind of blew my mind. One was Joe Montana a number of years ago where, growing up watching Joe Montana, the idea that he was sitting next to you, even if it was to promote Skechers, was a mind-blowing thing. I really couldn't quite handle that. And then also at the San Francisco Super Bowl, we had the Griffeys, both Ken Griffey Sr. and Ken Griffey Jr. And of course, sitting next to Ken Griffey Jr., who is an idol or a hero, if you grew up again of our age group, is like, whoa, I can't even believe I'm doing this. Celebrity-wise, Busta Rhymes was my favorite. We had Busta Rhymes in Minneapolis, of all places, at the Super Bowl. That was the Eagles and Patriots Super Bowl. And sitting next to Busta Rhymes and asking him about leaders of the new school and the hip-hop revolution of the 90s and why hip-hop today isn't nearly as creative or kind of off-the-wall or individual as his era was, and how he stepped out of a box and wanted to be different and everything like that. That was amazing. And so you're right. You get all the former athletes that come through, and that's great. But then when you get a cool celebrity come through and you can really like dig into some stuff that you don't get a chance to on a daily basis in sports, then that's the good stuff. That's the gold.
How many Super Bowls have you been to?
I've only attended 2 of them. I went to Steelers Seahawks 05. And
Me too. That's the only one I've ever been to.
Really? Oh, so we hit a good one in Detroit. And then I was at Patriots.
We got to fight off the hail one of those nights.
That's right.
The weather, brutal.
That's right. Yeah, who would have thought that Detroit in February wouldn't be a good place? And then I went to that the first Patriots-Eagles Super Bowl where McNabb barfed on the field. All the other ones that I've covered, we have flown out back home on Friday. So that's kind of the misnomer, I think, of radio shows that go out to Radio Row. You assume they do 5 days of radio shows out there, that they stick around for the game. That's not the case. The reason is because no company wants to spend an extra 3 nights at the hotel. What they end up doing is they jack up the rates at the hotels once Friday comes around. So your station, your company, lets you go there Monday through Friday, and then Friday afternoon, you're supposed to fly out after your show. If you stuck around for the Super Bowl, that means it's 2 more nights of hotel at a higher rate, or even a third, because if you're doing a Monday prime time, let's say Monday afternoon drive or something, now you're hanging around all day Monday. You might have to sleep there Monday night. So companies, PDs will usually tell you get out of town on Friday, watch the game at home.
This is a weird week, right? Because Vegas, you go to Vegas with your friends, it's 2 days, max 3. We got to get up out of here. But you got people who are there the whole week. That's a long time in Vegas.
I could not do that. I have a buddy of mine that covered the NBA for a long time and went out for Summer League. And I think Summer League was like 2 weeks or something. And he said, just as you said, after the first 3 or 4 days, you're so over it. You just want to go home. And there is kind of like a real tipping point in Vegas. I usually hit it after 2 nights. By day 3, third night, I'm going, get me out of here. 4th day, I got to get out. Once you hit that 4th day, everything becomes worse. It becomes exhausting and tiring, and you feel unhealthy. You get sicker and sicker by the day. You can't even really hit the casinos anymore or the sports books because your head is ringing. You're dehydrated. Remember, there's no windows in any of the casinos or hotel rooms, and so you feel like you get no fresh air. There's no clocks anywhere. They're pumping oxygen into every casino floor. It's a bad scene. You have everything ringing in your head. So imagine 2 weeks, or even, as you said, more than a week. Nah, get me out of there. 3 days, I'm good.
What's the setup? Like, what's the main hub there this week? What's the main hotel where everyone's staying?
Radio Row is going to be at the Mandalay Bay Convention Center. So a lot of people will be staying at either Mandalay Bay like we are. There is another hotel attached to Mandalay Bay called the Delano, and then there's the Luxor that's kind of right next door. So I would imagine all of the media staying in that general vicinity. Of course, nowadays, Radio Row doesn't have to be necessarily just Radio Row, because some shows or networks are big enough to go plant themselves at a different place. And, this isn't Indianapolis, where everybody's usually going to be in the same place. In Vegas, there might be 5 different main setups, but right now, the traditional Radio Row, the hub, is going to be Mandalay Bay this year.
Are you into the game? And the reason that I say that is because when we saw we were against San Francisco and Kansas City again, I feel like there was a lot of negative reaction out there, and I'm into this game. I think there's a lot of meat on this bone this week.
I understand why people are tired or not that jazzed up because nobody really likes repeats. They don't like to run it back. And this Niners team, I feel, has run into a lot of apathy or dislike from fans. And then the Chiefs, a lot of people just wish we got fresh blood. So number one, you're not getting fresh blood, you're getting the Chiefs. And then also you're getting a replay of the Super Bowl from 4 years ago. So I understand why people are exhausted. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, a Super Bowl is a Super Bowl, especially historically speaking, these two teams, there's so much on the line. For Mahomes and Andy Reid to have a third ring puts them in such a rarefied conversation. And then for the Niners, Brock Purdy cements a certain place in the pantheon of all-time craziest stories if he wins a Super Bowl. But Kyle Shanahan's had two collapses in the Super Bowl. One as an OC, one as a head coach. So there is a lot baked into this, which I like, but you're right. I think this match has been met with a lot of apathy and or frustration because of the two teams.
We're calling the one when he was head coach in San Francisco a collapse. I mean, obviously OC and with the Falcons was a collapse. We're calling the other one a collapse too?
Up 10 fourth quarter. I mean, blew a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. If it's not a collapse, it's definitely a gag. Is a gag and a choke and a collapse the same? I don't know.
I just feel like it was more on. I feel like it was more on
that?
Garoppolo. I thought Garoppolo was not good in that fourth quarter. He missed some throws. I pinned it a little bit more on Garoppolo.
Well, I think that there's blame on Garoppolo. There's blame on the Niners defense. They gave up the 3rd and 15 to Tyreek Hill, which blew the game open. And then also, there's always been some chatter about the play calling of Kyle Shanahan, whether he should have taken chances with Jimmy Garoppolo, whether he should have played more conservatively, try to play keep away from the Kansas City Chiefs. Either way, Shanahan has had a Super Bowl collapse, 28-3. He's had a Super Bowl loss. He's had a 10-point lead in an NFC championship game and lost that as well to the Rams a couple of years ago. And now he's had 2 playoff games where the Niners did not play their best football. I mean, when compared to what they did against Dallas and Philadelphia earlier in the season, compared to what we've seen against the Ravens and then the 2 playoff games, it does not look like the same Niners team. So I think he's definitely got some heat on him to perform well in this game.
What do you make of the conversation around Brock Purdy? Because I feel like you have a lot of people who have dug their feet in so deep because we didn't know who this guy was. He was the last pick of the draft. We didn't think he was anybody. And now, even though he's where he is, rookie year, NFC Championship game, second year Super Bowl, I feel like we're still digging our feet in because we were all wrong about him initially, and we want to be proven right.
Yeah, there's a crazy polarization of the Brock Purdy takes, and I don't ascribe to either one of them. The people that were defiant that he should be an MVP candidate, I completely disagreed with. I think he's been a good quarterback this year. He's been certainly an upgrade over Jimmy G, but that a lot of quarterbacks, or at least let's say 10 to 12 quarterbacks, could have done what he has done inside this offense. You can't make him the MVP. I think Christian McCaffrey is more valuable to the team than Purdy is. At the same time, the people that just want to dismiss him, discard him because he was Mr. Irrelevant, and think that anybody could do this. I don't agree with that either, because he has been very accurate. He has been very potent. He has been very agile. And so you have to give him that credit. The offense certainly runs better today than it did with Jimmy G or the brief time we saw Trey Lance. So it's somewhere in between. I think what hurts Brock Purdy is the story itself should be welcomed and embraced. A guy who's Mr. Irrelevant going all the way to the Super Bowl, that's amazing. And yet he's boring, so he doesn't give us any quotes. That doesn't help him. He doesn't have much of a personality, so people don't really know much about his background. And because the Niners have been in this spot without him, it feels like anybody could do it. Now, again, it's definitely an upgrade over what Jimmy G was. But I got a good tweet from a listener on Thursday. We were talking about this or of last week, and they said, yeah, every Niners fan is going to defend him to the death until he's got to make $50 million a year. And then they'll say, don't waste the money on him. Just draft the next guy, which I think is how a lot of people might feel like, yeah, Purdy's great for being a cheap quarterback. But if you had to pay him market value, like a Burrow, Lamar, Josh Allen gets when they're on the open market, Now, how do you feel about Brock Purdy? That's going to be the real test.
Have you been killing Dan Campbell on your show?
Annihilating him. And
really?
It's too bad because I've been somebody who's gone, I actually he's grown on me from day one and biting kneecaps. I thought this is a joke.
Right.
This is like
Me
high school gym teacher. And two, where I thought he's really matured this year and he doesn't do a lot of that nonsense anymore. They're taking on certainly his bravado and his spirit, and they wouldn't be where they are without him. And yet it's just indefensible bypassing the 2 field goals and then running on 3rd and goal when you have to keep all of your timeouts. It was just a masterclass in blowing your coaching decisions. And I realize he can't control a fumble and he can't control drops and things like that. But those 3 decisions will haunt him and that franchise forever.
Does Belichick ever coach again?
Zaz, here's the thing. This has been one of the single most interesting storylines of my lifetime in sports. How a guy could have 6 rings and be considered the greatest of all time by many and be unable to find a job. He wants to coach. And Joe Montana joined McAfee last week and said something that I was kind of shocked by anybody of that generation would say. And he basically said, people think the game has passed him by. And he kind of didn't disagree with that either. He was like, what Bill used to be is what new guys are now. In other words, he's not innovative anymore. He's not fresh-minded anymore. And I said, if Joe Montana believes that, what do younger executives, younger scouts, younger people in front offices believe? I think they believe that he lost it. And I think that he desperately wants Shula's record. And I think this year, maybe the power play didn't work of him getting control. And so maybe next year we come around and he goes, I'll just coach, because I really think he wants those 15 wins. At the same time, a year from now, everybody will feel like he's even more removed from his success. So it's an impossible question to answer because I think he wants to, and he might become more flexible, but people might believe next year he's even less qualified to run a team. So I don't know.
Now, speaking of coaching changes, coaching hires, on your YouTube page, you went off about the Kingsbury hire in D.C., right? Can you give me a little bit of a taste of that?
Oh, I think that Cliff Kingsbury is the single greatest fraud in football history, and I'll tell you why. Cliff Kingsbury goes to Lubbock, Texas to take over Texas Tech and never has a winning record in the Big 12. He gets Patrick freaking Mahomes. His best season with the Mahomes is 7-5 at a Texas Bowl loss. Impossible. They play no defense in the Big 12. You have Patrick Mahomes. Couldn't win a Texas Bowl. Then going to get fired there. They're like, wow, this guy's not good at his job. He somehow lands an NFL head coaching job in Arizona by virtue of being friends with Sean McVay. He takes over the Cardinals, and ask any Cardinals fan, one of the worst coached teams in football. They are perennially one of the most penalized, sloppy. They're ill-prepared, and every year is the same. They start out well and then collapse second half of the season because Cliff makes no adjustments, and other teams realize what they're doing on offense and go, okay, we can do that. Kyler Murray doesn't grow up during his 4 years with Cliff Kingsbury, is basically the same guy that he was afterwards. And Cliff has the gall in year 4 to say, I don't like our practice habits. We don't have the right mentality. Well, I would say by year 4, that's probably a you responsibility. Then, embarrassed and out of the league after a 4-13 with his final year in Arizona, he says, I'm not coaching. I'm taking my buyout going to Thailand. Comes back to coach USC just a couple months later, has the greatest quarterback prospect in college football since Andrew Luck, arguably. And Caleb Williams has a worse year under him than the previous year without him. Then somehow he parlays that into 2 OC offers, one in Vegas and now one in Washington. I think there's no way Cliff Kingsbury gets any of these jobs unless he looks like Cliff Kingsbury. He projects success, but if he looked like Jim Tom Sula or Arthur Smith, he doesn't get any of these jobs. None of them. So it's a joke.
And so all of that, your YouTube page, right? They can check out that and everything else you got going on there.
Oh, yeah. I put out videos almost once a day. So probably like 4 or 5 a week, 5 or 6 a week. But yeah, my latest one is just skewering Cliff Kingsbury. So if you want to enjoy that, feel free. It's on my YouTube channel.
Before I let you go here, DA, let me get your thoughts on a couple of big NBA topics right now. How much time have you dedicated on your show, probably the last couple of shows, on everything surrounding LeBron right now?
Not a lot. I think that in the NFL world, when nationally, it's like you build up to the Super Bowl and now everybody's real in on the Super Bowl. And then on Tuesday of next week, everyone exhales and goes, okay, the NBA. So certainly this year in LA has been bizarre with LeBron, and they certainly don't feel like they're anywhere close to a contender. But I would say everybody gets into the NBA, specifically the LeBron thing, about a week from today.
And do you feel strongly one way or the other about the big conversation in the NBA right now, the 65-game threshold, the awards? Embiid got hurt. LeBron's blaming the media for Embiid getting hurt. That's obviously ridiculous. Do you feel strongly one way or the other there?
I think the NBA has caught itself in an impossible matrix, and that is they know their regular season's too long, which is why they have to mandate how many games somebody plays. In the NFL, nobody says you have to play 12 games. You have to play 13 games because it's so short. Everybody would be crazy not to play those games. And in baseball, 162 for whatever reason has worked largely well enough for most of its history. But in the NBA,
it's accepted to take a day off every now and then in baseball.
But in the NBA, 82 is too many. And if you played 65 game regular season, I don't believe load management would have guys playing at 48 games. I think just 82 happens to be too long. So the NBA has to artificially incentivize playing. But what the real solution is to just knock down games off the regular season. But instead we have in-season tournaments and mandates to play 65 games for awards. And I think it's an admittance that the regular season is too long and thus too insignificant for these guys to play every game. And yet you're still trying to sell it to fans that it is significant when it's really not.
Great job, DA. Tell everybody how they can catch you. Go ahead.
Weekday morning, 6 until 9 Eastern time on Channel 82 on SiriusXM's Mad Dog Sports Radio. Or as I mentioned before, just search my name on YouTube and check out my channel there for daily takes.
Awesome job, man. Thanks a lot for hanging out with us. Have fun in Vegas. Not too much fun. Have fun. Stay safe. Let's not get too crazy, all right?
I'm there for 3 days, so I can't get too crazy. That's the exact amount of time. Then I pull the ripcord. Thank you, Zaz.